the governor of Maine, Janet Mills. She's also a Democratic candidate for U.S. Senate.
Governor, you've been very clear. You've called for Noem's removal at DHS. You've also called for congressional action to halt ICE funding until measures are in place at the agency to prevent abuses of power. Can you give me a sense of what you think is actually necessary in order to improve the agency?
Look, action is needed now. No more talk, no more kicking the can down the road like Washington does on everything, including recently the ACA fixes. Enough waiting, enough hand-wringing, enough creating a task force or studying it, thinking about reforms. Look, this is basic law enforcement 101. You don't put money out there for recruitment bonuses to a bunch of people who, whether they've been trained or not in anything, you put them out on the street and give them a quota from some political figurehead that means nothing as far as law enforcement is concerned, and then send them into Maine and call it catch of the day? Seriously? These are human beings they rounded up, which we cannot find now. These are human beings. It's not some fishing derby. And it's
Wait, can we talk about what you're saying? Because I want to make sure that our audience understands when you say you can't find people. There was some great reporting about this from the NBC affiliate. You're demanding the name of the 206 people in your state who've been taken by ICE. My question is, if ICE is truly taken the worst of the worst, as they say, all the bad guys, why don't they want to claim credit for that, Governor?
Good question. Good question, Alicia. And listen, what we know is we've heard a number of reports, and obviously citizens, well-meaning citizens, having videotaped a lot of these incidents where, for instance, corrections officers, hardworking corrections officers in 2 different jails in 2 different counties got pulled out of their cars, one with the windows smashed, and they left the car running on the street, dragged this guy out of his car and sent him out of state. He's a law enforcement officer. He's supporting a family. He's contributing to the community. He's not some hardened criminal. He's not the worst of the worst. Neither is the mother of 4 children who cannot find where their mother is now. And the many people who've been taken out of state, as soon as a habeas is filed in federal court, they move to a different state. They've gone to New Hampshire, Massachusetts, sometimes Louisiana, Texas, God knows where. And they're not accounting for these people's whereabouts or their safety or their health. It's inhumane. And so the Attorney General of Maine and I have demanded to know who they are, where they are, what their legal status is, and how they will get home. Were there any warrants? I've demanded from day one to see the warrants, judicial warrants that authorized the snatching, the taking of these people from their families, from their schools, from their workplaces. And I've asked, Susan Collins, she's there in the U.S. Senate. She supported Kristi Noem. She voted to confirm Kristi Noem. I think that was one big mistake. And now Kristi Noem must go. And there has to be accountability before any more funding for DHS is authorized at any level. There has to be concrete action, concrete measures of accountability, not mild reforms and, please wear a camera if you're in certain cities. But for God's sakes, don't use facial recognition and others implementations that could violate people's civil rights, for instance. Don't arrest people for videotaping what you're doing on the streets of Portland and Lewiston, Maine. You can't do that. And don't intimidate people who are peacefully protesting or just observing, using their cell phones and doing what conscientious citizens ought to be doing.
Governor, Governor, you're in a contentious primary now, and it seems that the issue of ICE and immigration is certainly in a rather moderate state like Maine become very hot button in the sense that people really want to see reform. There's a law in Maine I want to read about. It's called LD 1971, passed by the Maine legislature by just a single vote last year. It prohibits state, county, and local law enforcement officers from taking part directly in immigration operations unless ordered to do so by a judge. Governor Mills allowed it to become law without her signature on January 1, but because she didn't sign it, it doesn't go into effect until 90 days after the current legislature adjourned, which is likely later this summer. Do you regret not signing it? And does it show national Democrats that there is a real change on this issue, that people really want to see action against ICE in their communities in places like Maine, which are considered pretty temperate comparative to perhaps a Massachusetts or New York City?
We have seen changes since last June, and that's exactly why when I allowed the bill to become law, I issued a statement to that effect. The time requires this law to be implemented, and actually it is, for all intents and purposes, in effect. I've dealt with law enforcement most of my career as the elected district attorney for 3 counties, as attorney general for 8 counties, as the governor for 7 years, and 8 years rather. And I've worked with law enforcement. We know good law enforcement here in Maine, and what we've seen in recent months is far from good law enforcement. We have high expectations and standards for law enforcement in Maine. They don't go wearing masks and hide their identity. They don't go out and sweep the streets and pick up citizens in whole communities because of some artificial quota read to them by a political figurehead in some other state or Washington, D.C. That's not how we do law enforcement here in Maine. It's not the right way to do things. So that the principles of that law are in effect. The local law enforcement are complying with it. State police are complying with it. God knows they don't want to be complicit in this stuff. They actually know that if the federal government, the federal ICE officials make a bad arrest or do something terrible like they've been doing in Minnesota, local law enforcement, if they're assisting, their butts are going to get sued, not the federal ICE agents under the current law. So I'm calling on Susan Collins to step up to the plate, show a little courage, stop supporting $1 more for ICE, for DHS, until there's accountability for the actions they've already engaged in and serious reforms preventing them from these abuses in the future. Action needs to happen now, and Kristi Noem needs to go.